The mob snatches a woman, unaware her husband is the Navy's most formidable Marine. Did you actually think you could expose us and walk away? Unscathed, Mia Thompson's voice cracked through the silent warehouse, her breath echoing against concrete walls. She stood in the loading bay of Harbor's Edge Veterans Hospital, fluorescent lights humming overhead as she stared at the latest manifest she'd copied onto her phone. Dozens of crates, unaccounted for medical supplies, disappearing into thin air. Every night for the past week, she'd watched the same black delivery truck, its driver, nameless its cargo, unseen roll in between 2 and 3 a.m. Nobody seemed to notice, least of all the day shift accountants, who shrugged off her questions with casual indifference. But Mia was different. As the daughter of a decorated black veteran, she'd seen injustice disguised as bureaucracy, and learned early that silence could cost lives. For months, rumors swirled that someone high up was using the hospital's status as a veterans facility to smuggle untraceable military-grade hardware. Mia wasn't just the logistics coordinator in charge of every shipment. She was the one who'd grown up in the projects where supply shortages could mean the difference between life and death for her neighbors. She'd tracked serial numbers and cross-referenced flight logs, yet every time she brought up her findings, the hospital's chief medical officer, Dr. Sarah Patel, offered either a tight smile or a warning glance. "You're overthinking it," Sarah had said once, her hand hovering over a coat rack adorned with a single gas mask. Her father's relic from Vietnam, repurposed now as a macabre decor piece. That mask had become Mia's silent confidant, a grim reminder that beneath the veneer of healing, darker forces were at work. Tonight, as she loaded the final page of manifests into her encrypted folder, the tension in her chest tightened. She glanced at the rolling shutter, locked, but only a simple latch between her and freedom. Outside, her husband, Captain Alex Thompson, of Naval Intelligence, was thousands of miles away, likely asleep on his ship, unaware that his wife was about to step into the lion's den. Mia's fingertips brushed the zip tie cutters tucked into her jacket, a tool for emergencies that now felt as symbolic as the gas mask above her. She wasn't just cutting plastic. She was severing the invisible bonds that held this corrupt operation together. A sudden noise made her freeze, the echo of footsteps against metal grating. Mia's heart pounded, but she remained still, letting the shadows cloak her figure. She'd anticipated this confrontation, had rehearsed every word, every move. For every message she sent to the CIA analyst, Nia Johnson, she'd planted breadcrumbs of evidence in the cloud. So even if she was caught, the truth couldn't be erased. Yet the risk was immediate. If Jackson Cole's men found her here without backup, her body could end up untraceable, just another casualty in a web of tradecraft and white-collar crime. As the footsteps drew closer, Mia's inner calm sharpened to a blade's edge. In that moment, she realized that her fight was no longer just for herself. It was for every veteran denied their rightful care, for every colleague punished for speaking out, and for the memory of her father, who'd taught her that courage meant standing alone when necessary. She pressed a finger to her earpiece, whispering, "Now," and watched as the silhouetted figure paused at the threshold. The warehouse door rattled. Mia's phone screen flashed, a live stream icon. She was about to pull back the curtain on a conspiracy that reached far beyond a single hospital. But would anyone hear her scream for justice before the lights went out? "Thought you could outsmart me, didn't you, Mia?" The voice was low, gravelly, and dangerously calm. Before Mia Thompson could react, a gloved hand clamped over her mouth, and another yanked her backward. In the dim light of the storage bay, every crate and pallet became a potential weapon, or a hidden trap. Mia's mind raced, but her breathing stayed measured. She'd been preparing for this moment, though she hadn't known precisely what form the ambush would take. Now, zip-tied to a steel chair, the reality sank in. She was alone, outnumbered, and far from any immediate help. Just hours earlier, Mia had watched Dr. Sarah Patel wheel a cart loaded with unauthorized crates through the same corridor. Sarah's steady gaze had flicked to Mia, as if acknowledging a shared secret, then quickly masked by professional detachment. In one swift exchange, Mia realized that her mentor, The woman she'd admired for fighting hospital politics was entwined in this operation. The betrayal stung deeper than any physical threat. She pressed her back against the cold metal of the chair, letting that emotional blow transform into resolve. If Sarah, a respected black woman in a white-dominated medical hierarchy, could be corrupted by power or fear, there had to be more at stake than simple profiteering. Mia's earpiece crackled with static, a reminder that somewhere out there, CIA analyst Nia Johnson was digging into the same data trails. Every second counted. She flexed her wrists, feeling the nylon constrict uncomfortably, but not irreparably. With careful focus, she reached for the hidden cutters at her waist, a tool she stowed in case of emergencies that escalated beyond a viral live stream. The symbol of her father's old gas mask hung around her neck, now a grim talisman of resistance. Under its glass lens, she'd learned to see through lies. Now she needed that same clarity to turn the tables. Her captors' men in dark jackets bearing the insignia of Jackson Cole's private security firm irked at her calm. They whispered among themselves, mocking her persistence. A woman playing detective in a veterans hospital once sneered. Their racism, thinly veiled, only fueled her determination. Born to a single mother in a neighborhood where police calls outnumbered fire calls, Mia had internalized that her worth was often dismissed until she proved it. Tonight, she would prove it on her own terms. One of the guards approached, thrusting a phone in her face. They wanted the manifest files, the encrypted folder, that could expose the network of corrupt officers, bribed customs officials, even accomplices in the White House. Mia let her eyes flick to the screen, calculating her next move. The guard expected fear. Instead, she offered a steady smile. "If you think this folder is your lifeline," she said, voice steady, "then you don't know how to read it." With a hidden tap, she triggered a silent alert to Alex's secure channel. She felt the chair shift as her captor recoiled, but not before she saw the seed of doubt in his eyes. In the tense silence, Mia closed her eyes and summoned every lesson her father taught her: focused courage, the refusal to be silenced. Her fingers grazed the cutters. Outside, the warehouse door rattled again, this time with the thunder of boots hitting concrete. Mia opened her eyes. The next moves would decide not just her fate, but whether the toxic web she'd uncovered would unravel or consume them all. "You really believe a few zip ties can stop me?" Mia Thompson spat each word, a challenge that cut through the cold warehouse air. The guard sneered and tightened the nylon until it bit into her wrists, but she didn't flinch. In that moment, she carried the weight of every veteran who'd ever been gaslit by red tape, every colleague silenced for asking questions, and the memory of her father's voice. Courage is standing when they expect you to fall. Mia leaned back against the chair's steel frame, inhaling the sterile scent of industrial cleaners, and summoned that courage. Her captors, 5 men in black tactical jackets, circled her like predatory crows. One thrust a tablet into her face, its screen displaying a partial manifest code meant to intimidate. Yet, Mia recognized the sequence, a cleverly hidden encrypt key she'd left in plain sight. "You know," she said calmly, "if you wanted to read the file, you'd need the second half of the key, something you won't get by brute force." The lead guard cursed and barked orders, but Mia's logic had sown confusion. She'd spent weeks planting digital breadcrumbs, and now Cole's men were chasing shadows. Above her, the gas mask that hung from a nail on the wall caught the fluorescent glow, the same mask from her father's service days. To others, it was a prop. To Mia, it was a symbol of seeing through darkness. As she stared at its glass eye, she pictured her husband, Captain Alex Thompson, reading her emergency beacon, rallying his team of naval intelligence operatives. The code she'd sent, encrypted in her last heartbeat before capture, had alerted not just Alex, but also Nia Johnson at CIA headquarters. Every byte of data she'd uploaded was now streaming to their secure servers. A distant thud vibrated through the concrete floor boots, echoing information. Alex's detail was closing in. Yet Mia knew rescue wouldn't be clean. Jackson Cole, her kidnapper, was no ordinary crime boss. He'd anticipated outside interference and booby-trapped the warehouse's rear exit. If Alex's team stormed in without precise intel, they'd trigger secondary traps designed to collapse the structure. Mia's mind raced. She needed to guide them, but she was bound, gagged, and out of sight. In a swift motion, she tilted her head and bit through the duct tape over her mouth, the rubbery taste fueling her resolve. Her hands worked to loosen the zip tie's knot against the chair's seam. Every second was a gamble. If the guards realized her plan, they could execute her or erase all evidence. But fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. She owed the truth to every veteran whose life hung on the hospital's supplies, and to her own belief that justice must be louder than corruption. As she freed her hands, the warehouse door at the far end hissed open, first a sliver of light, then the low hum of tactical radios. Mia pushed herself upright, heart pounding like a war drum. Outside, Alex's silhouette filled the doorway, sidearm drawn eyes scanning, their gazes locked. Relief and urgency washed over her. This was the moment she'd prepared for. But with that hinge of hope came a new twist. Cole's voice crackled over Alex's comms, "Aim low or she dies." Mia realized they weren't just fighting for her life, but for the very soul of an institution built on honor. And with no time to hesitate, she had to decide, reveal the deeper trap she'd discovered, or trust Alex to see beyond the obvious and save them all. "Don't you dare. Move Captain Thompson." "Jackson." Cole's voice crackled over the radio, clipped and cold, as Alex froze in the doorway, silhouette outlined by the harsh floodlight beyond. Mia's heart slammed against her ribs. Alex was in the kill zone, and Cole held the trigger. She knew that if Alex made a rash move, everything would collapse: the warehouse, his team, and her chance to expose the full conspiracy. Mia inhaled, drawing on every ounce of will her father taught her, the same will that had pulled her through nights in the projects when hunger and fear were constant companions. In the dim glow, Mia rose slowly from the steel chair, hands raised but nimble. "Alex, listen," she whispered urgently into her hidden mic. She'd pressed her lips against the earpiece, earlier muffling her words from the guards. They booby-trapped the eastern exit. Chemical canisters set to trigger if that door opens. We need Plan B. The gas mask dangling from the wall above became her silent witness, its empty ocular lenses reflecting the tension in her eyes. To the guards, she was just a hostage. To Alex, she was the strategist. She'd encoded the canister locations in the manifest's metadata and sent it to Nia hours ago. Now the CIA analyst was working in lockstep with Alex's team, coordinating a secondary breach through the rooftop ventilation shafts. Alex's jaw clenched. He scanned the floor, saw the steel grates covering the vents she'd pointed out, and gave a slight nod. He edged forward, keeping his weapon trained on the guards. Mia's voice on his comms cut through the tension. "While they're distracted, we flip the breaker in the fuse box near the west wall, cuts the power to the canister triggers. It's your window." Alex's team massed and tactical fanned out behind him, approaching the fuse box with calculated steps. Each second, electric current hummed through the building, promising death if Cole was right. Inside, Mia masked her fear with calm determination. Her social conscience hated that she'd enlisted military force to rescue her. She believed in civilian oversight transparency, not boot-on-throat tactics. Yet here she was, calling in a raid to save not just herself, but the integrity of a veterans' hospital turned smuggling hub. It was the ultimate irony. She'd trained for years in logistics mapping supply chains, only to find one channeling weapons through the heart of a place meant for healing. As she edged past the guard who held her restraints, she sensed the fractures in their unity. One guard hesitated, his finger twitching at the radio. She'd exploited that earlier by pointing out the guard's missing wedding ring, a subconscious crack in his loyalty. Now that empathy might give her an opening. "Breaker in 3, 2, 1. Alex's voice boomed, followed by a sharp snap and a cascade of darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, painting the warehouse in red and white strobe. The chemical canisters clanged as their locking mechanisms disengaged. Panic erupted among the criminals best trained to anticipate technology, but blind to one human truth: fear of the unknown. Amid the chaos, Mia tore away her remaining bonds and sprinted toward the wooden crate marked confidential. Weapons testing data. She yanked the lid heart pounding as she rifled through piles of paperwork and hardened drives. Symbols of betrayal stared back at her company letterheads from Blackridge Industries, coded memos referencing embargoed nations, lists of military officers complicit in the cover up. She stuffed as much as she could into her jacket. Every page a testament that corruption had been systemic, fueled by profit, and protected by prejudice. Veterans, many black, many white, had been reduced to pawns in a deadly game masquerading as medical logistics. Suddenly, the warehouse doors shattered inward. Alex's team stormed in, weapons raised shouts and codes slicing through the smoke. Mia halted mid-reach, clutching the evidence like a lifeline. Behind her, the guards' solidarity disintegrated, some surrendered, others bolted too late to trigger further traps. Alex reached her eyes fierce, then softened when he saw the documents in her arms. He didn't need words. His hold on her shoulder promised loyalty beyond orders. Yet, as they backed toward the exit evidence in hand, a crackle on Nia's channel pierced the moment. Mia, you've got a problem. The network shows a second location in Chicago. This isn't just a single operation, it's a national network using veterans' hospitals as fronts. Mia's blood ran cold. She realized the scope was far larger than one warehouse. The evidence in her jacket was a thread, and she'd only found the start of the tapestry. The whistle she'd left on her mic caught the radio traffic of corrupt officials, scrambling to cover their tracks in multiple cities. In that instant, Mia knew this rescue was only phase 1. As Alex signaled for exfiltration, Mia looked back at the flickering warehouse, once a symbol of care, now scarred by betrayal. She squared her shoulders, determination hardening into purpose. There were more fronts to expose more lives, depending on her conviction. And with that thought, Mia Thompson stepped into the night, ready for the battle that lay ahead, knowing the real war was just beginning. Turns out they weren't just hiding weapons, they were weaponizing a hospital. The words crackled in Mia Thompson's earpiece, each syllable landing like a grenade in her chest. She and Captain Alex Thompson were now huddled in the dim safe house's living room, piles of classified drives and manifest printouts spread across the coffee table. The pale glow of dawn filtered through blackout curtains, illuminating the gas mask perched on a shelf, a silent witness to every twist and betrayal. Mia's heart pounded, but her face was steely. She'd survived capture, orchestrated her own rescue, and now she was staring down the scope of a nationwide operation that threatened the lives of veterans in every city. Alex leaned forward, throat tight. Chicago's the next node. The data shows flights and manifests syncing with deliveries at the Northside Veterans Center. His voice wavered with controlled urgency, military precision, mixed with personal fear. Mia felt the familiar surge of responsibility. If she faltered, innocents would die, waiting for life-saving care. Yet, another twinge of doubt flickered. Could two people, even a Marine intelligence officer and a logistics coordinator, really dismantle a conspiracy that had co-opted hospitals across state lines? In that moment, Mia closed her eyes and reached up to touch the gas mask's cracked lens. Her father's worn service tag still hung from its strap. He'd told her the enemy isn't always on the battlefield. Tonight, she understood. The enemy was hidden in paperwork protected by corrupt officials and buried under layers of false paperwork. And yet, she refused to cower. She drew a slow breath, reminded herself of every veteran who deserved dignity, every colleague gagged for speaking out. That resolve was stronger than any fear. "All right," she said, voice firm. "We can't just storm another warehouse. We need local allies, whistleblowers, hospital staff, maybe even a union rep. They'll know the layout, the security cameras, the human element." She tapped at her tablet, overlaying security camera angles from Chicago's facility. "I want to plant a beacon. Something subtle. A symbol we can follow inside." Alex nodded, sliding her the encrypted drive that held footage of men in dark jackets unloading unmarked crates at 3 a.m. "We'll release it to the press the moment we have visual proof they're moving weapons," he said. full public exposure. Mia hesitated. Public exposure meant risk not just to themselves, but to any insider who stepped forward. She thought of Dr. Sarah Patel, torn between loyalty to the hospital and guilt over complicity, and Nia Johnson, the CIA analyst, whose clean office walls now bore the weight of classified files. They needed to safeguard their sources. We'll need cover IDs, safe extraction routes, even a contingency for traders in the local PD, she added. Her mind punched through each scenario, weaving worst-case possibilities. Sewers, abandoned med labs, sympathetic ambulance drivers. Every twist of logic had a counter-twist waiting. Outside, the first birds of morning trilled a false calm. The conflict between justice and self-preservation pressed on Mia's chest. She believed in transparency, but what if transparency meant blood on hospital floors? She shook it off. No more hesitation. She stood, slamming a folder closed. Let's move by dusk. Chicago is locked down tight, but they won't expect a woman who's already been kidnapped to lead the charge. Her smile was grim, but her eyes shone with unshakable conviction. Alex reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Whatever happens, he said softly, we face it together. Mia nodded, letting the warmth wash over her, their partnership a living rebuke to every corrupt officer who'd tried to break them. Locking eyes with him, she saw not just love, but unwavering trust. It was the spark she needed. As they packed the gear, satellite uplinks, biometric scramblers, backup power packs, Mia's phone buzzed with a message from Nia, federal agents in Chicago are compromised. We have to go dark. The blood drained from Mia's face. The safe house suddenly felt claustrophobic, every wall a potential mirror reflecting betrayal. Her mind raced. If federal agents were on the take, then Chicago wouldn't just be another front. It would be a fortress of corruption. The risk level had just tripled. Mia paused, hand on the door handle. The symbol of the gas mask flickered in the low light, reminding her that seeing through darkness was her gift and her burden. She took a breath so slow it felt like defiance, then pulled open the door into the cold morning air. Chicago awaited, with secrets buried beneath the hospital hallways and blood on its manifest pages. And, as the door clicked shut behind them, Mia Thompson knew there was no turning back. The real fight was about to begin. Brace yourselves, there's movement in the ceiling vents. Mia Thompson's whisper crackled through Alex's earpiece, every syllable tight with urgency. They crouched behind overturned gurneys in the supply corridor of Chicago Northside Veterans Center. Flashlights slicing through dusty shadows. Mia's heart pounded, not from fear, but from determination. She'd come too far to let this operation collapse in the chokehold of corrupt cops and corporate mercenaries. As the daughter of a black veteran who taught her to stand up when everyone else sat down, she carried their legacy in her spine. Moments earlier, they'd met their insider, Nurse Carla Reyes, a Latina ICU supervisor who'd watched crates of unmarked boxes pass through her wing at unprecedented volumes. Carla's hands trembled as she handed Mia photos of chemical weapon components hidden in what were labeled sterile dressing kits. The betrayal cut deep. Mia had believed civilians still held hospitals sacred. Together, they'd mapped out camera blind spots and patrol patterns. Now, Carla's face loomed in Mia's mind every time she flicked off a motion sensor or jammed a lock, a reminder of the real stakes patients who trusted them with their lives. A faint metal clatter echoed above. Mia's fingers brushed the gas mask she'd stowed in her pack, its cracked visor symbolizing how protection could also become a prison. She tightened the strap on her wrist-mounted scrambler, designed to black out security feeds, and slid it under her sleeve. Social order depended on trust. Here, that trust was weaponized. She glanced at Alex, recognizing the same steel in his eyes that had once anchored her through dark nights on the docks back home. They were mismatched partners, civilian and Marine, but their shared conviction bridged every gap. Suddenly, lights behind them blinked to life. Red LEDs danced across the ceiling. Carla's intel had been compromised. They've cut the power to the West Wing. Alex reported, voice low. Expect reinforcements through that hatch. Mia swallowed hard. The hatch above the storage closet, only 4 feet across, was their planned exit route once they secured the evidence. If guards poured in from both sides, they'd be caught in a deadly pincer. Yet, hesitation wasn't an option. She leaned close to Alex. We stick to the plan, grab the drives, and ghost through the vents. I have the schematics. Her calm belied the electric risk jolting through her veins. They sprinted down the corridor using overturned carts as cover, as distant shouts and the screech of boots neared. Mia's fingers flew over the keypad on the media storage room door, bypassing the code she'd extracted from manifest metadata. Inside rows of server racks hummed a hive for the illicit data she needed. She yanked 2 encrypted drives from her jacket and jammed them into the nearest port, watching the progress bar fill. Each percent ticked like a heartbeat. If they didn't finish before the guards reached them, the entire operation and their lives would vanish. 10%? 20? 30? Alex counted down from the entrance as muffled voices approached. Mia's gaze drifted to a stained glass window, high above its fractured shapes, casting rainbow shards across the floor. A church's gift to the hospital, a symbol of hope marred by corruption. She inhaled, pressing down every flicker of doubt. 40? 50? She thumbed the scrambler's switch. Cameras blinked off. 60? 70? 80? The hatch rattled. Mia braced herself. 90? 95. The last seconds stretched like an eternity. The moment the download hit 100%, the server room's door burst open. Alex swung and weapon raised, but behind him were more than guards, an FBI tactical unit guns trained on Mia and Alex. Drop everything, one shouted badge gleaming under harsh LEDs. Mia froze. This was supposed to be a rescue, not another ambush. The walls closed in. She tightened her grip on the drives, her interior resolve, steeling itself for the next twist, who here could be trusted, and who was leading them into the lion's den. Why are you here? Captain Thompson arresting us? The lead FBI agent's badge gleamed as he stepped forward, weapon still trained on Mia and Alex. His voice was sharp, accusatory. Trust evaporated in the flash of his holster. Mia's chest tightened. This wasn't protocol. It was a setup. In one jagged moment, she realized that even federal seals could be counterfeit when corruption ran deep. She locked eyes with Alex's disbelief, mirrored in his gaze, quickly replaced by readiness. Seconds earlier, they'd thought rescue had arrived. Mia had just completed downloading the drives, hard proof that veterans' hospitals nationwide were fronts for illicit weapons trafficking. The screensaver flickered off, revealing rows of file folders stamped Blackridge Industries, Pentagon level, clearance embargoed nations. It was enough to topple empires, indict generals, and shatter public trust. Yet now, the men behind these new badges were not here to protect. They were here to silence them. Mia pressed a hand to the gas mask dangling from her belt, its cracked lens echoing the fracture in her faith in institutions. She'd assumed that once the truth was out, the system would correct itself. But here, in the hum of server fans, she faced the reality that power would cling to lies before yielding to justice. Alex stepped forward, voice firm. We have evidence of a conspiracy. We're cooperating. The agent sneered. That evidence is destroyed. Your leads end here. Behind the agent, other FBI operatives advanced, forcing Mia and Alex into a tight circle. Mia's mind flashed back to Nia Johnson's warning. Federal agents in Chicago are compromised. She'd hoped it was paranoia. Now it was chilling fact. Yet fear was a luxury she couldn't afford. Drawing on every lesson from her upbringing, where survival meant seeing the bigger picture, she whispered to Alex. Follow my lead. With a single nod, Mia lunged toward the nearest server rack, grabbing a fiber optic cable. The whir of machinery roared as she yanked it free, plunging half the room into darkness. Emergency backup lights cast an eerie red glow across the floor. Out of the shadows, Alex tackled the lead agent, disarming him in 2 swift moves learned during their years apart. Mia ripped free the second encrypted drive, clutching it like a lifeline. The corrupted agents regained their footing, weapons swinging back. But Mia had no time for aim. She sprinted toward the narrow maintenance corridor Carla had shown her earlier. She heard Alex's roar behind her as he disarmed another FBI guard. The pulse of boots followed, echoing the prejudice that had labeled her just a logistics coordinator until she proved them wrong. Now prejudice was a tool to be weaponized against them, arresting them as criminals to hide the real ones. A single hallway light flickered overhead, spotlighting Mia's silhouette. She paused, breath ragged, and looked back at Alex, who gave her a tight thumbs up. In that moment, she recognized their unbreakable bond, civilian and Marine, husband and wife, standing against every corrupted uniform. She dashed through the maintenance door and heard the agent's shouts splintering behind her. Beyond the threshold lay a ladder leading up to the rooftop vents. Climbing meant exposure to the cold night sky, and a perilous drop if she misstepped. Yet remaining meant certain capture and erasure of the truth. Mia's fingers closed around the edge of the hatch as alarms blared below. She inhaled, summoning the courage her father instilled in her. Justice demanded sacrifice. Reverend Jefferson's stained glass window in Chicago's chapel had taught her that light shines even when prison walls darken. Now, the gas mask's cracked lens and that broken window melded into one symbol. No matter how fractured, hope pierced the gloom. Mia kicked the hatch open and climbed upward. Alex followed, pulling the ladder up behind him. As the hatch clanged shut, muffling the agent's footsteps below, Mia let herself savor a fraction of triumph, then squared her shoulders ready to race across the rooftop towards safe extraction. But in the dusky sky, storm clouds gathered over the city, warning that the fight for truth was far from over, and that sometimes the most dangerous battles are fought not in clear daylight, but in the shadows between power and principle. I thought they had me dead when I saw those FBI badges. Mia Thompson's voice trembled as she clung to the rooftop's edge, sweat stinging her eyes in the cold Chicago air. Below, shadows raced through the back corridors of the Veterans Center, corrupt agents scrambling to reassert control. Mia glanced at Alex Thompson beside her rifle, in hand, determination etched into every line of his face. Together, they perched atop the hospital's rusted ventilation duct, the city's skyline a jagged silhouette against dawn's pale light. In that moment, she realized the fight for truth was never a straight line. It was a tangle of lies, loyalties, and long-buried betrayals. A chopper's rotor wash thundered above. Nia Johnson's voice crackled in Mia's earpiece. Eagle 6, stand by. We've cleared airspace extraction in 2 minutes. But the DOJ just notified me. Secretary of Defense involvement, this goes all the way up. Mia swallowed hard, recalling the cracked gas mask in her pack, the same relic her father used in jungle patrols. It symbolized his sacrifices and the cost of blind obedience to corrupted orders. Now that mask was her reminder, no matter how high, the stakes no truth was too dangerous to uncover. Alex reached over, brushing a strand of Mia's hair from her face. We go up, then we expose everything he said. His words were simple, but they carried the weight of every veteran denied care, every hospital staffer who'd suffered threats for speaking out. Mia nodded, feeling her resolve crystallize. She'd infiltrated supply rooms, endured captivity, outwitted killers in uniform, and now she would stand on a national stage and shine a spotlight on the rot beneath the veneer of healing institutions. Below, the red emergency lights still pulsed through dusty windows, warning that the operation wasn't over. The corrupt elements inside would try to salvage what they could slip away with hard drives, delete manifests, bribe witnesses. But Mia had already seeded every batch of data, financial records, shipping manifests, covert communications across multiple secure servers. Even if the stolen backups were shredded, the truth was irretrievable. Like Brewer's stained glass window in the old chapel, fractured yet unbreakable, the evidence would stand. Here we go, Alex said as Nia's drone illuminated the rooftop with a soft flood. Mia strapped in beside him, the chopper's skids rattling beneath her gloves. As they lifted off, she looked back at the hospital, the place she'd joined to serve veterans, now revealed as a nexus of systemic corruption. A fire station had replaced the old chapel windows on the ground level. The painted glass, now depicted firefighters in stained glass, style an unintended symbol of rebirth and resilience. High above, Mia exhaled a breath she'd been holding for days. Her inner voice honed by childhood hardships, and her father's uncompromising moral code whispered, "This is only the beginning." The city shrink wrapped below them as she scanned the drives in her jacket pocket, proof that the conspiracy spanned multiple states, tied to a network of defense contractors, profiting off the suffering of those who fought for their country. Back at CIA headquarters, Nia prepped the first press release. Alex steeled himself for testimony before a Senate committee. Mia sat in the back of a secure transport gas mask, at her feet service tag glinting under fluorescent lights. She reflected on the twist logic that had unraveled the conspiracy. Hospitals meant to heal had become laundering laundromats for illicit arms. Federal agents meant to protect had become the greatest threat. Yet here she was, a logistics coordinator turned whistleblower, ready to challenge the highest echelons of power. The transport doors slid shut. Mia pressed a fingertip to the cold glass, watching the city lights blur into darkness. Her phone buzzed with an incoming message from Carla Reyes. "They're staging something in Miami. You've got to see this." Mia's heart kicked. Another front. Another battlefield. The chopper's engines whined as the world beyond the window beckoned. And in that suspended moment, she smiled, fearless, unbowed, and more determined than ever. The war for truth would rage on, but Mia Thompson was ready.